Hello, my name is Dakota, and today I have the absolute pleasure of interviewing Laura Piani, the director of Jane Austen Wrecked My Life. Camille, the star of Jane Austen Wrecked My Life. It's a film that blends the romantic chaos and literary obsession and the ghost of Jane Austen herself into a wonderfully clever and unexpected modern tale. It's charming and it's chaotic, and for me it felt like a warm hug, and it felt like I was deep inside one of those classic great books that makes you fall in love with reading all over again. So I'm here not only to enthuse about the film and the incredible hard work that you've put into it, but I also want to pick your brain on this film. I have some questions and we have to dig not very deep to the literary core, because the literary core is the entire film. So I'd like to start by asking about the title of the film. The title alone, Jane Austen Wrecked My Life, whilst it's playful, it's also very telling. You know, it's a humorous jab, but it also sums the entire core of the film. So what did it mean to you personally, stepping into a project that reimagines Austen not just as an author, but as a myth, as a mirror, as a misdirection?
It's funny, because I remember starting to write the film, not knowing exactly where I was going. I had the bookshop, I had this bookseller, this portrait of a woman, and I had this title. And this title was a guide for me, a guideline. A lot of people, especially in France, told me that it was too long, that it was absurd, that nobody will ever remember it. And honestly, deep inside me, I wanted to keep it first because I know that I'm not alone with Jane Austen. Like, we are many.
I remember I really liked the title because it was long and it's funny and it's radical. I myself never was a big fan of Jane Austen. Not that I disliked her, but then when I was a teenager, I watched over and over again the Ang Lee movie. I grew up with that movie and then with the book. That book kind of wrecked my life in many ways.
I love the irony that was behind this title, because how could she actually ruin a life? It's impossible, or wreck a life. But I didn't want to do a film only for people who knew Jane Austen. You would be surprised about the number of people who came to see the film, at least in France, without knowing about the writer. But it was just a mystery also, this title, Jane Austen. Who is this Jane Austen? And why did she ruin any life, This irony, this tone helped me to write the script.
It is a memorable title. I'm going to remember that title forever, because so many of us can relate to that. Jane Austen and these authors, these romantic authors, ruining our perception of just about everything. Jane Austen obviously is everywhere in the story. It's about Jane Austen, dare I say, but Agathe, she's no Lizzie Bennet. She's this wrestling, flawed modern woman. Did you find yourself identifying with her, and how did you make her heartbreak feel so lived in? It felt like this seamless transition from you to this character. How did you go building that?
I felt close to her, but then I'm not like her at all. I'm not a writer. I admire writers, but I could never do it. I don't have enough talent, and I think I thought about my sister a lot, because I'm very, very close to my sister. Like in the movie, she has a sister, and my sister wrote a novel. At the time when I was making the movie, her first novel had just come out, and I remember the years before where she was struggling with exactly what Agathe is going through, not being able to finish a novel, feeling like an imposter. It's very relatable.
That's wonderful. It's a very famous notion that writing is a lonely art. It's one of the loneliest arts, because you're always just holed up by yourself at this desk trying to make something happen. There's something quietly radical about making a literary film for a modern audience. What do you think draws people back to these stories, and what do you hope that your film adds to this tradition?
Well, I think I started to work on this film in a very simple way, very modest way, which was, I need this kind of film. As a viewer, I miss it. This kind of author rom-com. It was really addressing something, but in a light way. And I was also, I think, missing seeing films about literature and poetry. I think it's really rare to talk about poetry in a film, which is absurd. I think maybe Jane Campion does it in every film. She finds a way, to combine poetry and cinema. I just tried to do a film that I was missing. As always, a first feature is also something that you carry for a long time, and you put a lot of who you are in a first feature.
Absolutely. I've heard people talk about their first feature film or their first book. They say that the first thing is always everything you've ever wanted to create in one, because you have so much that you've gathered that you want to say, that you want to get it all out in one go. So I love that you've created this from that. What a clean piece for so much going on that you want to put together.
I remember when I was in my 20s, I pretended I didn't like Jane Austen. Because I thought, oh, she's cheesy, she's girly. I was only reading David Foster Wallace and Sarah Kane. And then I realized, oh, Camille, you're being so superficial. Jane Austen is much more than that. It's really about complex human beings and women who are independent women who who are really trying to be free. And also in Jane Austen's novels, female characters, they also laugh and make fun of society and the rich people and these balls where everybody is selfish and egoistical and superficial. So yeah, of course we can still relate to these novels. They're so modern.
Absolutely, no, you're so right. What I love about Jane Austen's novels is that the characters are so complex and so vivid and so layered, and I love the way that this was translated into this film as these complex and vivid and layered characters. And there's also a certain intimacy in the way that this film treats books, just literature as a whole. They're like sacred objects. Books are these sacred objects, and these characters have these intrinsic sacred connection with this literature. There's a line in which Agathe states that she feels as though she is not living in the right century, which so many of us can relate to. I feel like so many modern Austen adaptations, they either modernize the plot or they parody it and flip it onto something that it's not. But your film holds this reverence to Jane Austen, and that's a really magical thing. I want to ask, was there ever a temptation to go full rom-com and to flip it up a bit, or did you know that it always needed to be this reverence thing?
I wanted to draw a portrait of a woman who is saved by her own qualities, as in Jane Austen's books, actually. That's what I love so much. Jane Austen inspired me consciously and unconsciously. When you love a writer so much, you don't know what belongs to her or not consciously at some point.
You answered my next question, because I was about to ask you. I was going to say that the film feels like an ode to the women who grew up inside of books, only to be disillusioned by real life, you know, losing yourself. We've all been there by these ideals. This role really does feel like a conversation between Agathe and every woman who's ever clung too tightly to a book or a dream or an ideal, this kind of curated, perfect, romantic thing that just might not exist in this modern world. Was there a particular scene or line that felt most close to you?
There's the scene where she's with her nephew. I really like that scene because I'm a mom myself, and I thought about my sister, and maybe that's something that she could have happened to her when he comes in her bed and she says, "Why are you in here? There's a boyfriend in mom's bed." And then Agathe says, "Well, how do you know there's no guy in my bed?" And then he says, "Because I've never seen one." I love scenes with adults and children. And I also like there's a moment where she says literature is like an ambulance dashing through the night to save someone.
That was a wonderful line. I wrote that line down myself as well. I'd also love to ask you about the iconic locations in this film. We've got Shakespeare & Co., which you said you worked at. We've also got the reimagined world of Jane Austen, and I'd like to ask you how these settings contribute to the narrative, and what was your experience filming in these literary landmarks?
So Shakespeare & Company was the first place I had in mind, and the beauty was that I knew that I could shoot there. They're my family, and I've been working there for years. They receive so many visitors every day that we didn't have the budget to ask them to close the bookshop, so they let me shoot during the night. So it was a quite magical moment in my life, you know, to be back in this bookshop 15 years later. And then during the writing of the script, I went to England because I didn't know much about Jane Austen, really, you know, apart from being a reader. I did a lot of research, and then I thought, okay, I should create completely my own, you know, fictional fantasy about the writing residency, because, you know, it's a mix between so many places I've seen, so the freedom was more interesting to embrace.
It just seemed like every location was just meant to be. And I can't wait to rewatch it now and notice that in all the Shakespeare & Co. scenes, it's actually nighttime. That's going to change my entire perspective of this. My final question for you is, this film makes literature feel alive again. It's mysterious, it's seductive, it's even dangerous. Do you believe that books still hold that power today to shape a person and to ruin them and to set them free?
Oh yes, I think more than ever. I think we need to be far away from the reality as much as possible right now, and books are offering that. They offer you other lives, you know, other windows on the world, and other way to understand the chaos of the world. It's definitely more than ever an emergency to read the classics and to read everything. It's rich, and the beauty is that it's there and will never finish, no, in a lifetime, to read everything we can.
I'm going to remember that forever. It's an emergency to read. It genuinely is an emergency to read. It's the most pure form of escapism that we have. If there's one thing that people remember from this interview, it is an emergency to read. You must read all of the books. Well, thank you so much. This has been an incredible conversation just for myself. I don't care if nobody else sees this now. This has been so enriching for me as a person. And so thank you for letting me pick your brain and for answering so honestly and truthfully and candidly. It was wonderful.